Episode 4: Flames of Africa. The cave's fire had burned down to glowing coals, casting a soft red light across the stone walls. Luna and Finn were both sleeping peacefully now, curled up tightly together under thick furs. Their small chests rose and fell in perfect sync, faces finally relaxed after everything they'd been through. Victor and I had only just found them, gotten them warm, and settled them down. I sat close by, watching over them, my silk blouse still rumpled from the long, chaotic night. The weight of motherhood felt both brand new and ancient at the same time. These children had called me mother only hours ago, and already I would have torn the world apart to keep them safe. Victor stood at the mouth of the cave, coat still on, his storm-gray eyes scanning the snowy horizon. His old burner phone suddenly rang. Impossible this deep in Siberia, yet it did. He answered immediately. "This is Victor." The voice on the other end was tense, speaking quickly. "Victor, it's bad down here." The drones hit the Congo Basin hard, 30 of them, drilling straight into the ley lines under the jungle for coltan and rare earths. The tribes are fighting back with old magic, but they're losing ground fast. We've got Kofi Reyes with us, along with several of our Unity wizards and witches. They're already investigating the ley line damage. Kofi can portal through and pick you up. He'll be there in about an hour. Victor's gaze flicked to me. "We'll be ready." He hung up and slipped the phone away. The Unity team in Africa. The situation's worse than we thought. Kofi is going to portal here to bring us down, and they've got mages on site already. I nodded, eyes still on the twins. Remy and Alpha will stay and watch over them while we're gone. Alpha lay beside the twins like a massive, scarred guardian. Golden eyes half-lidded but alert. Victor stepped closer to me, voice low. "You ready?" I stood up, brushing dirt from my clothes. "Let's go save the jungle."
The air in the center of the cave suddenly warped and tore open with a low hum. A lean, scarred white man stepped through the shimmering portal. Kofi Reyes. Golden-flecked hazel eyes swept over us, taking everything in at once. "Stormforge," he said, voice carrying a faint London accent worn smooth by years in the jungle. "You brought company. Good. We don't have much time." The moment we stepped through Kofi's portal, the humid heat of the Congo Basin slammed into us like a living wall. The humid heat of the Congo hit me like a living thing the second we stepped out of Kofi's portal. The air was thick, wet, and heavy with the smell of rain-soaked earth, rotting leaves, and something far worse, burnt flesh and ozone. Kofi was already moving, half-shifted between man and panther, his golden eyes scanning the dense jungle ahead. I fell in beside him, lightning crackling faintly along my knuckles as we pushed through the underbrush toward the ley-line shrine. We hadn't gone far when the trees opened up into a small village clearing. What was left of it? At least 36 bodies lay scattered across the ground. Maybe more. Men, women, children. Some of them so small they couldn't have been older than Luna and Finn. Most of them had been cut down by plasma fire. Clean, cauterized holes burned straight through chests, heads, and limbs. A few had been torn apart by the Frankenstein horrors we'd seen earlier. Limbs ripped off, bodies stitched with metal and ley energy still sparking faintly in the dirt. Huts were burning. Thick black smoke rolled into the sky as thatched roofs collapsed in showers of sparks. The air tasted of charred wood, blood, and cooked meat. A woman's body lay half in, half out of a doorway, her arms still curled protectively around a small child who would never wake up again. Their eyes were open, staring at nothing. I felt my stomach twist. Kofi's panther form growled low beside me, ears flat against his skull. He shifted back to human long enough to speak, voice rough with barely contained rage. "They came at dawn. Drones first. Then the stitched ones. These people never stood a chance." I crouched beside one of the bodies, an old man, his chest burned open by a single plasma bolt. His hand still clutched a carved wooden staff etched with protective sigils. The magic hadn't been enough. My jaw tightened until it hurt. This wasn't just a raid for resources. This was slaughter. I stood up slowly, lightning flickering brighter around my fists. "They're going to pay for this," I said, voice low. "Every last one of them." Kofi met my eyes, his own glowing with the same cold fury I felt. He nodded once, then shifted back into his massive panther form. We kept walking. The village burned behind us, smoke curling into the green canopy like funeral pyres. The sounds of the jungle had gone strangely quiet. Even the birds knew something unnatural had happened here. Ahead, through the trees, I could already hear the distant whine of more drones and the heavy mechanical footsteps of the Frankenstein horrors. I clenched my fists until my knuckles cracked. Whatever was coming, we would meet it head-on. The air was thick with the smell of wet earth, rotting vegetation, and ozone from plasma fire. Plasma bolts streaked through the dense canopy, lighting up the green like lightning. Black drones scuttled across the jungle floor on spider-like legs, while three towering Frankenstein-like horrors, stitched together abominations of metal, flesh, and stolen ley energy, lumbered forward, their massive forms crashing through vines and underbrush. Kofi immediately slammed his palm against a glowing tattoo on his arm. His body cracked and shifted in a blur of fur and muscle. In seconds, a massive black panther the size of a horse stood where the man had been, golden eyes blazing with fury. He roared and launched himself at the nearest drone, claws ripping through armored plating like it was wet paper. Victor's lightning cracked through the trees like a living storm, chains of electricity arcing between branches and striking the nearest drone. I let my glamour ripple outward, bending shadows and confusing the drone's red sensor arrays so they fired wildly into empty air. In the chaos, I spotted the Unity Mages, a small but determined group of wizards and witches fighting alongside the tribes. One witch with intricate braids hurled bolts of green fire that melted drone plating on contact. Another wizard had raised a shimmering barrier of light, protecting a cluster of tribesmen while chanting in an ancient tongue that made the air itself vibrate. A third mage sent arcs of crackling silver energy that short-circuited drone legs, causing them to collapse in sparking heaps. One of the stitched horrors swung a massive metal arm at me. I slashed my palm open with a fang and flicked my wrist. A whip of dark crimson blood lashed out, wrapping around the creature's limb and yanking hard. The monster stumbled forward, off balance. Victor's voice cut through the noise. "Your blood. My blood. You've been drinking it long enough. It's changed you." I felt the power surge through my veins, familiar yet wilder than before. I pressed my bleeding hand to the jungle floor. The moment my blood touched the soil, thick, thorny blood-red vines erupted upward, wrapping around two of the giant monster's legs and crushing them with terrifying strength. Metal groaned. Flesh tore. The creatures roared in fury as the vines tightened, pulling them down into the moss. The void tugged at me almost immediately. My knees buckled, faint blue veins flickering beneath my skin. Victor was beside me in an instant. He sliced his own wrist and pressed it to my lips. "Drink. Quick." I took what I needed. Strength flooded back into me. My eyes sharpened, and the blood whip reformed in my hand, longer, stronger, and pulsing with power. Kofi shifted back to human form mid-leap, pressing another tattoo. A glowing ethereal sword appeared in his grip. He drove it straight through the core of a drone, then grinned at me, breathing hard. "Nice trick, Vampire Queen. Keep it up." We fought like we'd been doing it for years. Victor's storm lightning chained between enemies, frying circuits and sending drones crashing into the trees in showers of sparks. Kofi blurred between panther and man, claws tearing through armor while his sword flashed in human form. I moved like liquid night through the chaos, slamming my blood whip into the ground again and again. More crimson vines exploded upward, dragging drones down into the dirt and crushing them. I felt the jungle itself responding, the ley lines humming beneath my feet, feeding me power. The Unity Mages joined the fray with precision. Green fireballs arced through the air, melting drone plating into slag. A wizard raised walls of force that slammed into the Frankenstein monsters, staggering them long enough for Kofi to rip into their joints. another which chanted and sent roots bursting from the ground to tangle mechanical legs, while a third mage hurled arcs of crackling silver energy that short-circuited entire groups of drones. One of the giant stitched monsters finally fell, crashing through the trees with a thunderous boom that shook the ground. The remaining drones began to retreat, their red sensor lights flickering uncertainly as they rose back into the canopy. The clearing fell into a strange, heavy silence broken only by the returning sounds of the jungle, birds calling, insects buzzing, and distant running water. Kofi shifted fully back to human, chest heaving, sweat and black drone fluid streaking his scarred skin. His golden eyes moved between us. "You fight like the land itself," he said, voice rough but impressed. "The tribes would call you brothers and sisters." A female witch with intricate braids walked up, staff still glowing faintly. "The ley lines are stabilizing. But this was just a scouting force. More will come." Victor clasped Kofi's forearm firmly. "Stay with us. The war's global now. Tokyo next. Berlin. DC. We need every ally we can get." Kofi looked toward the ancient stone shrine half buried in the clearing. Soft blue ley light pulsed steadily beneath the moss now, healing. "The tribes taught me to protect what's sacred," he said quietly. "This fight, it's bigger than one jungle. Amen." I touched the pendant at my throat, feeling the warmth of the pack bond thrumming through it. "Family grows," I said softly. We stood together, Stitched Giant, Vampire Queen, Panther Mage, and Unity Wizards and Witches, as the jungle breathed around us. But in the distance, a low electronic hum returned. New lights flickered on the horizon. Victor looked south, storm eyes steady and calm. "Then we keep going." The family moved as one. And the war followed. Trattino, trattino. Just as we turned to leave the clearing, a terrified scream ripped through the air, Luna's voice, somehow reaching us across continents. "Father, Mother, the drones are here. They're in Siberia." My blood ran cold. We all froze. The war had just found both of our homes at the same time. Kofi didn't hesitate. He slammed his palm against a tattoo and the air tore open once more. We stepped through the portal and emerged into chaos. While we were fighting for our lives in Africa, something was happening at the same time, far away in the frozen wilds of Siberia.
Episode 5, Shadows of Siberia. While Victor and Livia were battling in Africa, the twins were fighting for their lives in Siberia. The fire crackles softly in the cave, casting warm light on the stone walls. I sat with the twins, our minds linked in quiet practice, thoughts flowing smoothly between us, no words needed. While we communicate mind to mind, I'm also schooling them on the simple things they've missed since going feral. How to blend into cities, use money, read maps, order food without drawing attention, all the basic stuff to help them live among humans again. Suddenly, Alpha bursts in, snow clinging to his coat. Drones are coming fast. We snap out of the link. Power surges through me as my blood swords form in my hands, gleaming crimson. The twins shift into their hybrid wolf forms, snarling. Alpha freezes for a split second, staring at them. No normal werewolf is that big in hybrid form. They're larger than a standard wolf. His golden eyes are wide with disbelief. What has Victor's blood unlocked in these children? There's no time to answer. We charge out onto the flat snow, ready. The drone swarm hits hard, red lasers slicing through the air, explosions kicking up ice and snow all around us. I slash upward, carving 2 drones apart in a shower of sparks. My hands are shaking. These things are fast, way faster than I expected. I barely dodge the next plasma bolt that scorches the snow right where I was standing. Luna and Finn leap and tear through the machines, their claws ripping metal, jaws crushing circuits like it's nothing. They look so natural, so powerful. I'm just trying not to die. Alpha and the pack dart between them, snapping at exposed wiring and smashing drones to the ground with savage fury. I hear Alpha's deep growl cutting through the chaos. "Keep moving, don't let them surround you." I spin, slicing through a trio of drones diving at the twins. My blood swords feel heavier than usual. One twin rolls, claws raking a drone's underside until it sparks and crashes. The other leaps high, smashing two together mid-air before they explode. I want to feel that confident, but my heart is hammering so loud I can barely think. We're gaining ground, the snow littered with smoking wreckage, when the ground beneath us begins to tremble. A low rumble builds, shaking the ice. "Watch out!" I shout. But it's too late. The earth rips open with a deafening crack. Snow and rock erupt upward as the massive earth driller erupts from below, its colossal drill screaming like some kind of mechanical demon. Behind it lumber three hulking Frankenstein monsters, patchwork bodies stitched with glowing red eyes. My stomach drops. These things are huge. How are we supposed to fight that?
That's when the shadows at the edge of the battlefield tear open like a curtain ripped by invisible hands. A woman with long, fiery red hair floating around her as though she were underwater steps out of the rip in darkness. A sleek black blindfold is tied tightly over her empty eye sockets. Living shadows curl lazily through her hair and around her arms like living serpents. At the same moment, a thunderous roar splits the tundra. From the opposite ridge charges a majestic white polar bear in ornate battle armor, its eyes glowing icy blue. Astride its back rides a regal woman with long, flowing silver-white hair crowned by a spiked ice diadem. She wears intricate blue and silver armor trimmed in white fur. Frost and snow swirl around her like a living aura as she grips a glowing trident of pure ice. "I am the Ice Queen, protector of the Siberian wolf pack and queen of all the Arctic kingdoms," she declares, her voice ringing like cracking glaciers across the battlefield. "These lands and their guardians are under my watch." The Ice Queen leaps gracefully from the polar bear's back. With a fluid motion of her hand, she summons a swirling vortex of ice and snow, instantly forming it into a shimmering longsword. She charges forward, her polar bear mount roaring as it barrels into one of the Frankenstein monsters, slamming it backward with sheer force. The blindfolded woman doesn't speak. She simply raises both hands, and the shadows around her surge forward like a tidal wave of night. They slam into the earth driller, wrapping around its spinning drill arms and crushing the metal with brutal force. Sparks fly as the machine fights against her grip. Drones immediately swarm the new arrivals. The Ice Queen spins, her sword melting and reforming into a massive ice shield just in time to block a barrage of plasma fire. With her other hand, she hurls her trident like a spear of lightning. It punches straight through two drones before she yanks it back with a flick of her wrist, the weapon trailing Frost through the air. The blindfolded woman moves like liquid darkness. Shadows burst from the ground beneath a cluster of drones, impaling them mid-air and slamming them into the snow. She barely seems to move, yet destruction follows her every gesture. I shake off my shock and charge back into the fight. "Remy, left flank!" Alpha bellows. I nod and slash at the drones the pack is herding toward me, my blood swords finally finding their rhythm. The earth driller recovers and turns its massive spinning cone toward us. The Ice Queen meets it head-on. She slams her hands together and a wall of jagged ice spikes erupts from the ground, forcing the machine to grind against them. The blindfolded woman follows up instantly. Her shadows coil around the drill like black chains, slowing its rotation. Together they're holding the monster back, but it's not enough. The three Frankenstein beasts are closing in fast. "Watch the big ones!" I shout. One of the hulking abominations swings a massive fist at the blindfolded woman. She sidesteps with unnatural grace as a wall of living shadow swallows the creature's entire arm. When the shadows pull back, only charred metal and ash remain where the limb had been. The Ice Queen doesn't waste the opening. She forms a long ice spear in her free hand and hurls it with deadly accuracy, piercing the second Frankenstein monster through the chest. Frost rapidly spreads across its body until it freezes solid.
With a powerful kick, she shatters it into 1,000 icy pieces. Luna suddenly plants her paws and lets out a terrifying howl. Pure black energy erupts from her body, washing over the battlefield. The earth driller screams as chunks of its metal frame begin dissolving into nothingness. But I can see the strain. Her body is trembling violently. The third Frankenstein monster charges straight for her. The blindfolded woman is faster. Her shadows explode upward like a forest of black thorns, impaling the beast and lifting it high into the air. The Ice Queen leaps high, forming a colossal ice warhammer in both hands, and brings it crashing down onto the creature's head with earth-shaking force. Luna's power finally gives out. She collapses hard into the snow, shrinking back into her small human form. "The girl!" the Ice Queen shouts. She spins, creating a protective dome of swirling ice and snow around Luna's body to shield her from stray fire. "Cover me!" The blindfolded woman's shadows lash out in every direction, tearing apart the remaining drones, while the Ice Queen scoops Luna into her arms. She surrounds the unconscious child in a gentle cocoon of soft frost and races toward Alpha's cave, her polar bear charging alongside her like a living tank. I'm breathing hard, my shoulder burning where a plasma bolt grazed me earlier. The blindfolded woman gives one last sweeping glance across the battlefield, then slips silently back into the shadows and vanishes. The Ice Queen returns moments later from the direction of the cave, her expression calm but resolute. Frost still drifting from her fingertips. The battlefield falls into a strange, heavy silence, broken only by the wind howling across the tundra. Smoking wreckage and twisted metal lie scattered everywhere.
I felt it like lightning through the bond. 1 second I was with Victor, the next I was ripped straight to Luna. The connection flared with raw pain and fear so strong it nearly knocked me off my feet. I didn't hesitate, I jumped. The darkness around her was absolute. She was floating in it, curled up like a wounded animal, the void still raging inside her like a storm. Her power was wild, uncontrolled, burning her from the inside out. "Luna," I said, my voice cutting through the black. She startled, her glowing eyes finding me in the void. "Grandfather." I moved to her immediately, placing a hand on her chest. The burning eased under my touch, but it wasn't enough. She was slipping. "You overextended," I told her, keeping my voice calm and steady even though I was terrified for her. "You're feeding the void with your fear. Let it go, little wolf. Breathe with me. It hurts." She whispered, her voice so small it broke something in me. "I know." I stayed close, anchoring her the best I could. "Your brother is by you. Your parents are almost here. You're not alone in this darkness, I'm right here with you." I felt the bond lines glowing between us, strong and clear. This was the first time I had jumped straight to one of the twins. The first time I truly understood just how powerful this new family bond was. "I won't leave you," I promised, my hand still pressed over her heart. "Not until you're safe." I stayed with her in that empty darkness, holding the storm back as best I could, praying the others would get to her in time.
I knelt beside Luna's fevered body, gently wiping the sweat from her forehead with a damp cloth. She was burning up, twitching every few seconds as the void raged inside her. In the back of my mind, I felt Elias' presence. He was with her. Without thinking, I reached through the bond, not just to Elias, but to Luna herself. "Luna? Sweetheart, can you hear me?" There was a long pause. Then, very faintly, I felt her. "Mother?" Her voice was weak, exhausted, but it was there. I squeezed her hand tighter, my heart racing. "I'm right here, baby. Elias is with you. You're not alone. Just hold on, okay? We're all here." I felt Elias gently brush against my mind, like a quiet acknowledgement. "She can hear you," he said softly. "Keep talking to her. Your voice is helping anchor her." Tears stung my eyes as I leaned closer to Luna's ear and kept whispering through the bond. "We've got you, little wolf. Mama's right here. Just come back to us." Luna's eyes crack open looking at me. "Mother?" My hand brushed away stray strands of hair from her beautiful face. "Yes, sweet girl, I'm here, Mother's here." I was so scared there were so many of them. They just kept coming, then the ground shook and the giant machines came. "I called for you, and for my father." Luna said sleepily. "We heard you, sweet girl. You were great, so brave and strong. I'm sorry we were not here to protect you." I said, a tear falling from my face rolling down my cheek. I bent down and hugged her. "I'm so sorry, my sweet girl," gently wiping the sweat from her fevered brow with a cool cloth. Her small body still trembled, skin burning hot despite the freezing cave air. I kept my movements slow and soft, trying to bring her some comfort while I listened to the low conversation happening just a few feet away in the shadows. Alpha's deep, gravelly voice carried clearly to my ears. They were bigger than they should have been, Victor. Both of them. I glanced over my shoulder. Victor stood with his arms crossed, listening intently. Alpha continued, his golden eyes serious. "I've seen hundreds of werewolves shift in my lifetime. In hybrid form, a normal wolf stands maybe 8-9 feet tall at most. Luna and Finn. They were pushing 10, maybe 11 feet. Broader shoulders, longer claws, denser muscle. They moved faster than anything I've ever seen. Stronger too. They tore through those drones like the machines were made of paper. Victor stayed quiet, letting Alpha speak. "And that's not even the part that worries me most," Alpha said, his voice dropping lower. "When that earth driller came up out of the ground, Luna planted her paws, threw her head back, and unleashed something I've never seen before. Pure black energy, like the void itself. The snow turned black beneath her. The air warped. That massive machine just dissolved. Pieces of it unraveled into nothing, like the world forgot it was ever there. She destroyed it in seconds, but the power took everything out of her. She collapsed the moment it fell." Alpha paused, glancing toward Luna's shivering form. "Victor, that kind of power isn't normal. Not for a wolf. Not even for one of us. Whatever your blood did to those children, it unlocked something dangerous. Something I don't think they're ready for yet." I kept gently washing the sweat from Luna's face and neck, my heart aching as I listened. My hands stayed steady, but inside I was terrified for her. She was just a little girl, and the void was already trying to swallow her whole. Then the shadows in the corner of the cave began to move. They twist unnaturally, thickening and swirling until they tear open like a curtain. She steps out of the rip in the darkness, long fiery red hair floating around her as though she were underwater. Her sleek black blindfold is still tied tightly over her empty eye sockets. Living shadows curl lazily through her hair and around her arms. She doesn't speak at first. She simply stands there, head slightly tilted. Victor tenses, his hands raising up, electricity crackling from his fingertips. I rise to my feet, instinctively stepping between Naira and Luna. Her head turns toward us. "You left them," she says, her voice cold and sharp. "You left 2 children, 2 powerful children, alone in Siberia with nothing but an old wolf to protect them. And you're surprised the aliens found them?" Victor's jaw tightens. "We had no choice. There was a situation in Africa." "A situation," she repeats, her voice dripping with disdain. "So you chose to run off and play hero while your children were left defenseless." Brilliant. My eyes flash with anger. "These are children, not weapons," I snapped. "There are kids. They shouldn't have to fight at all." Naira tilts her head, shadows shifting around her. "They are children," she says. "But they are also powerful children. And powerful children who are not taught how to use their gifts will either hurt someone or themselves." Alpha's deep, gravelly voice rumbles from the shadows. "She speaks the truth," the old wolf says quietly. "I told Victor the same thing just hours ago. Untrained power is a danger to everyone, including the one who carries it." Naira turns her blindfolded face toward Luna's sleeping form, her tone softening just slightly. "That girl carries enough raw power to destroy a earth driller in one shot. Raw. Untrained. Dangerous." Finn too. I sense a large amount of power coming from him too, but for some reason he either can't or chooses not to use it. "If you keep leaving them like this, they won't survive long enough for you to fix your mistakes." My hands clench into fists. "Then what do you want from us?" She helped us in the battle and took 2 of those monsters down herself. They couldn't lay a finger on her and she just decimated them like they were nothing. She also made sure Luna and Finn were as safe as they could be and had backup during the battle when they needed it. Remy said, tired. She is silent for a long moment. The shadows around her grow still. "My name is Naira Vera. I can help," she says finally. "I will help Luna control the void before it kills her. I will teach Finn to reach out for his power, to use it and use it safely. I will teach both of them how to truly use their power. Because Victor only sees it as something to suppress. I see its true potential." She turns her blindfolded face directly toward Victor and me. "But nothing is free. I want a deal." Naira's voice drops to a near whisper. "I want you to take me back to hell. My eyes were taken from me there. I want them back. I want to see again, not just sense the world through shadows." She takes one slow step forward. "Help me retrieve what was stolen from me. And I will stand with you. I will protect your children. I will teach them. I will become the ally you desperately need." The cave falls silent except for the crackling fire. Naira tilts her head. So, do we have a deal?
I stood a little ways back, at the edge of the clearing, on the twins' first day of training, watching silently as Naira worked with Luna and Finn. She had the twins sit cross-legged on the grass, facing her, forming a small triangle. Naira remained standing for a moment, looking down at them with her blindfolded face. "I will be stern with you," she said plainly. "I will push you hard. I will not be soft or gentle. I will expect the very best from both of you, every single day. If you slack off, I will correct you. If you get careless with your power, I will stop you immediately." She paused, her voice softening just a fraction. "But I will not be cruel. You may think of me as a very stern aunt, the kind who loves you, but who will not accept anything less than your best." Luna and Finn looked up at her with wide silver eyes. Finn gave a tiny nod, while Luna's expression grew serious, like she was taking every word to heart. Naira finally knelt down, so she was closer to their level. "Close your eyes," she told them. "The void inside you is not a toy. It is a storm. Right now it is wild and chaotic. Your only job today is to keep that storm from spilling out. You do not push it, you do not shape it, you simply contain it." She raised one hand. A thin ribbon of living shadow rose from her palm and began to slowly circle the three of them. "I will send very small amounts of shadow toward you. Your job is to feel it and gently push it back. Do not let it touch you." The first thread of shadow drifted toward Luna. The moment it got close, her power flared. A pulse of pure blackness rolled off her. Naira's shadow immediately wrapped around the flare and pushed it back down with firm but careful control. "Easy, little one," Naira said, her tone stern but not harsh. "Breathe. Control it. Do not fight it." She continued guiding them with calm, precise instructions, correcting them every time their void energy spiked too high. By the end of the hour, both twins were breathing hard and looked exhausted, but they were both sitting straighter than when they started. Naira rose to her feet and looked down at them. "You did better than I expected for the first day," she told them. "Tomorrow will be harder. Be ready." She turned and walked away without another word, her long red hair and shadows trailing behind her. I stayed where I was, watching her go, my heart beating a little faster than it should have. On the second day, Naira didn't waste any time. The moment the twins sat down in the clearing, she shook her head. "No seething today. We're moving past basic control. You already know how to hold the storm in. Now you learn how to use it." She stood tall, blindfolded, face turning between Luna and Finn. "Today we begin real training. I will teach you 3 things: how to fight smart, how to fight in wolf form, and how to use your surroundings. A warrior who only knows how to throw power is a dead warrior." Naira started with the basics of strategy. "Fighting is not about being the strongest," she said, walking slowly around them. "It is about being the smartest. Always know where your enemy is, always know where your allies are, and always know what the ground, the trees, the rocks can give you." She had them practice simple hand-to-hand first, correcting their stances, teaching them how to stay balanced, how to read an opponent's movement. Even though they were only children, Naira was firm and precise with her instructions.
"Smaller does not mean weaker," she told Luna when the girl got frustrated. "It means you must be faster and smarter." After nearly an hour of hand-to-hand, Naira stepped back. "Now shift." Both twins changed into their hybrid wolf forms, towering over her. Naira didn't flinch. "In this form, you are stronger and faster, but you are also bigger targets. You must learn to move with purpose." She spent the next hour teaching them how to fight strategically in wolf form, how to use their size to their advantage instead of letting it become a weakness, how to coordinate their movements together, and how to use the environment around them. She had them practice leaping off rocks, using trees for cover, and striking from angles their enemy wouldn't expect. "Work together," Naira called out as they sparred. "You are not two wolves. You are a pack. When one strikes, the other covers. When one falls back, the other protects." By the time the sun was high in the sky, both twins were panting, their hybrid forms covered in dirt and grass stains. They had improved noticeably. Their movements were sharper, their coordination tighter, and they were starting to use the terrain to their advantage. Naira finally called them to a stop. She walked over and placed a hand on each of their massive shoulders, her touch surprisingly gentle for how stern she had been all morning. "You are learning quickly," she told them, her voice warm with quiet pride. "A stern ant is proud of you today." Luna's wolf tail gave a single tired wag. Finn bumped his head lightly against Naira's side. Naira's lips curved into a small smile. "Tomorrow we begin combining your void powers with your fighting. Rest now. You've earned it." As the twins shifted back to their human forms and headed inside, Naira glanced in my direction for the first time that day. Her shadows drifted toward me for just a moment before pulling back. She said nothing, but the small, almost reluctant curl of her shadows told me she knew I had been watching the entire time.
On the third day, I stood at the edge of the clearing again, watching Naira train the twins. Something had shifted in the way she worked with them. She was still stern, but there was a quiet confidence growing between the three of them. Naira had them in their hybrid wolf forms, moving through the field. She was teaching them how to combine their void powers with coordinated attacks. "Together," she called out. "Luna, you strike high. Finn, you strike low right after. Do not hesitate. Do not second-guess each other." The twins moved in sync, black void energy crackling around their claws as they practiced their timing. Naira corrected them with sharp but patient instructions, her shadows occasionally reaching out to guide a misplaced strike or steady one of them when they overextended. She was tough on them, but I could see the way she softened just slightly whenever one of them got something right. A small nod, a brief "good," or the way her shadows would gently brush against their fur in approval. As I watched them, my eyes kept drifting back to Naira herself, the way she moved, the way she commanded the space around her without ever raising her voice, the quiet strength in everything she did. I found myself thinking the same thought I'd had for the last 2 days. I should ask her to train me. She was clearly an incredible teacher. The twins were already getting sharper, more controlled, more dangerous. If anyone could help me get better with my blood powers, it was her. But every time I thought about walking over there and asking, the words got stuck in my throat. How was I supposed to ask someone like her? She was this powerful, terrifyingly competent being who had literally crawled out of hell. I was just me? The guy who still swung his blood swords like he was hoping for the best? What if she said no? What if she thought I wasn't worth her time? I rubbed the back of my neck, watching as Naira demonstrated a movement for the twins, her long fiery red hair drifting dramatically around her. My stomach twisted with nerves. Maybe tomorrow, I told myself. Yeah, I'll ask her tomorrow. Naira suddenly turned her blindfolded face in my direction, almost like she could feel me staring. Her shadows curled slightly before she turned back to the twins without a word. My face heated up. Definitely tomorrow. The twins had finally fallen asleep inside the chapel. I sat alone by the dying campfire, the warm orange glow flickering across the stone walls. I was restless. My mind kept replaying everything that had happened lately, so I summoned my blood swords just to give my hands something to do. The crimson blades formed along my forearms, glowing softly in the firelight. I twirled one slowly, watching the way the blood moved and reshaped itself. A soft voice came from the shadows behind me. "Do you even know how to use those?" I nearly dropped the blades. Naira stepped into the firelight, her long, fiery red hair drifting slowly around her shoulders, even though there was no wind. Her blindfolded face was turned toward me. I'm still figuring it out," I admitted, letting the swords fade away. "Livia taught me the basics, but I mostly just swing them and hope for the best." Naira was quiet for a moment, her shadows curling lazily through the firelight. "That's not good enough," she said simply. "If you're going to fight with them, you need to know them. You need to master them." She took another step closer, her presence somehow both intimidating and comforting at the same time. "I will train you," she said. It wasn't a question. I looked up at her, surprised. You want to train me?" Naira tilted her head slightly, shadows shifting around her. "You have potential, Remy, but you're wasting it. I won't let you keep swinging those blades like a child with sticks. Come at me with your blood swords now." I lunged forward with a clumsy overhead swing. Naira barely moved. She just tilted her head at the last second, letting my blood sword slice through empty air right past her ear. Before I could even pull back, her palm snapped out and shoved my shoulder. It wasn't hard, but it was enough to send me stumbling forward like an idiot. "Again," she said, calm as ever. My face was already burning. I spun and swung wide, trying to catch her with a horizontal cut. She stepped straight into my swing, way too close. Her forearm knocked my blade aside like it was nothing, and two of her fingers flicked against my ribs. "Dead," she murmured. "Your heart would be on the ground right now." My cheeks were on fire. I gripped both blood swords tighter and rushed her again, slashing left then right in a wild flurry. She moved like smoke. Every time I thought I had her, she just wasn't there anymore, those shadows curling around her like they were mocking me. I overextended on the third swing. Her foot hooked behind my ankle and the ground disappeared. I hit the dirt hard on my back, both blood swords flying out of my hands. Naira stood over me, arms loosely crossed, looking down with that unreadable expression. "Sloppy footwork," she said. "You're swinging with your arms instead of your whole body. Your balance is terrible, and you telegraph every strike like you're writing me a letter about it." She tilted her head slightly. "How long have you been training with those blood swords?" I lay there on the ground, chest heaving, staring up at the pale dawn sky. 3 to 4 days. I've only been able to manifest the swords about then. 3 to 4 days, she repeated, almost softly. A shadow curled around her wrist as she reached down and offered me her hand. She pulled me to my feet in one smooth motion, like I weighed nothing. "You have the strength. You have the heart." She picked up one of my fallen blood swords and spun it once in her hand with casual, effortless grace. "But right now, a child with sharp toys would give you more trouble. Be ready at dawn."
Then she turned and melted back into the shadows, leaving me sitting by the fire with my heart beating faster than it had any right to. The next morning, my entire body ached as I sat on the low stone wall at the edge of the clearing. Every muscle screamed from last night's brutal training session with Naira. My arms, my ribs, my back, everything hurt. But I still couldn't take my eyes off the field. Naira stood in the center with Luna and Finn, her long, fiery red hair drifting slowly in the breeze. She had already taught them the basics of void control, hand-to-hand, and fighting in wolf form. Today, she was focused on something else. "Awareness," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the grass. "You two are powerful, but you are blind to the world around you. A warrior who cannot read their surroundings is a dead warrior." She walked slowly in a wide circle around the twins. "Close your eyes, both of you." Luna and Finn obeyed, standing in their human forms with their eyes shut. Naira continued speaking as she moved. "Tell me what you feel. Not with your eyes, with everything else. The wind on your skin, the temperature of the air, the way the ground feels beneath your feet, the sound of the birds, the movement of the clouds. A real fighter is aware of everything around them at all times." She flicked her wrist. One of her shadows silently rose behind Finn and tapped him lightly on the shoulder. He startled and spun around. "Too slow," Naira said sternly. "You are focused only on what was in front of you. Your enemy will not be so kind." She spent the rest of the morning drilling them on environmental awareness, making them fight while blindfolded, having them call out changes in the wind or temperature, and teaching them to feel the subtle shifts in the air when something moved nearby. By the end of the session, both twins were breathing hard and clearly frustrated, but they were improving. They were starting to notice things they had completely missed before. Naira finally called them to a stop. "Better," she said, placing a hand on each of their heads. "You are beginning to see with more than just your eyes. That is what will keep you alive." She glanced briefly in my direction. Her blindfolded face lingered on me for a moment, but she said nothing.
I stayed on the wall, sore and quiet, watching her walk away with the twins. Even though my body hurt, I already knew I'd be back here tonight for another round of her brutal training, and honestly, I couldn't wait. I stood in the center of the ruined chapel, breathing hard, sweat dripping down my back. Naira stood a few feet away, her fiery red hair drifting in slow currents of shadow. We'd already spent an hour drilling sword forms, and I could actually feel myself getting better. My swings were cleaner, my footwork sharper than they were just 2 days ago. Enough with the blades, Naira said suddenly. You're starting to get comfortable. Now show me something new with your blood. I hesitated, then tried forming the whip again. It snapped forward with decent speed, but it still felt off, like I was forcing it. Naira tilted her blindfolded face toward me. You're still treating your blood like a weapon you hold. It's not. It's part of you. Just like my shadows are part of me. I lowered my hand, curious. What's the difference between what I do and what you do? Naira was quiet for a moment, shadows curling lazily through her long red hair.
They are more alike than you think, she said. Both of us pull something from inside ourselves and give it shape. Both of us can make it sharp, make it strike, make it protect. But the way we do it, that is where we differ. She raised one hand. A ribbon of living shadow coiled around her fingers like a serpent. My shadows are external. They answer to my will, but they are not me. I command them. I send them out. They are extensions of my reach. She gestured toward me. Your blood is internal. It is you. Every drop carries your life, your will, your essence. When you shape it, you are not commanding something outside yourself. You are reshaping a part of your own body. That is why it fights you when you're uncertain. That is why it responds so strongly when you stop thinking and simply feel. I looked down at my hands. So, when I finally got the whip right yesterday, when you touched my arm, exactly, she said, her voice softening just slightly. You stopped trying to control it and started being it. That is the difference. My shadows obey me. Your blood becomes you. I tried again, this time letting go of the need to force it. I focused on what I wanted the blood to be instead of what I wanted it to do. The whip formed instantly, thicker, faster, alive in my grip. Naira's head tilted. Better. Much better. I cracked the whip toward a broken pillar. It struck cleanly, leaving a deep gouge in the stone. A small, proud grin crept across my face. Naira stepped closer. Her shadows brushed lightly against my arm, almost like a touch. The same, yet different, she murmured. Both of us shape something that should not exist, and yet here we are. For a moment the air felt heavier between us. I looked at her, blindfolded, surrounded by living darkness, terrifying and beautiful, and felt my pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with training. She must have sensed it, because her shadows curled a little tighter around my wrist before slowly pulling away. Again, she said, voice steady, but just a fraction softer than before. Show me what else your blood can become.
I leaned against the crumbling stone wall, arms crossed, watching Remy practice in the bright daylight streaming through the ruined chapel. He moved through the sword forms with real confidence now. The crimson blood swords flowed smoothly along his forearms, every strike clean and precise. His footwork was sharp. His balance was solid. This wasn't the same uncertain kid I'd known just days ago. Naira stood beside me in the shadows, her long fiery red hair drifting slowly even though there was no wind. She didn't need eyes to see him. Her shadow senses tracked every movement. He's improved, I said quietly. Naira tilted her blindfolded face slightly. He has. The blades no longer fight him. They obey him now. I watched Remy execute a perfect spinning slash, the blood swords cutting clean arcs through the air. That's because of you. You've been hard on him. I had to be, she replied, her voice calm and even. He had the potential all along. He simply lacked confidence. He kept treating the blood like a tool instead of part of himself. Once he stopped fighting it, the rest came naturally. Remy finished a sequence and reset his stance, breathing steadily. He looked focused, strong. I glanced at Naira. You're good for him, you know. You push him. You don't coddle him. He's never had that before. Naira was quiet for a long moment, her shadows curling lazily through her hair. Before I could say anything else, she spoke, her voice low and serious. I don't want you all to go to hell for my eyes. I turned to look at her, surprised. Why not? She stayed perfectly still, shadows drifting slowly around her. Because I have come to know you as family. All of you. When I first arrived, I was cold and distant. I kept everyone at arm's length. But the more time I spent training Remy, the more I got to know him, the closer I became to all of you. Her voice softened just slightly. He sees something in me worth believing in, even after everything I've been through, even knowing where I came from. I will not ask this family to walk into hell for me. Not when I have already found something I never thought I would have. I studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. After everything Liv and I have been through, I said quietly, the way we were with each other in the beginning. I recognize what this is. Two people who are exactly what the other needs. Naira stayed silent, but the shadows around her moved gently, almost peacefully, as she continued watching Remy practice. He still has a long way to go before he's ready to go into battle again, she said finally, though there was no bite in her tone. I smiled faintly. Then keep training him. Because from where I'm standing, he's already becoming the man you both need him to be.
The next morning, my entire body ached as I sat in the low stone wall at the edge of the clearing. Every muscle screamed from last night's brutal training session with Naira. My arms, my ribs, my back, everything hurt. But I still couldn't take my eyes off the field. Naira stood in the center with Luna and Finn, her long, fiery red hair drifting slowly in the breeze. She had already taught them the basics of void control, hand-to-hand, and fighting in wolf form. Today, she was focused on something else. Awareness, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the grass. You two are powerful, but you are blind to the world around you. A warrior who cannot read their surroundings is a dead warrior. She walked slowly in a wide circle around the twins. Close your eyes, both of you. Luna and Finn obeyed, standing in their human forms with their eyes shut. Naira continued speaking as she moved. Tell me what you feel, not with your eyes, with everything else. The wind on your skin, the temperature of the air, the way the ground feels beneath your feet, the sound of the birds, the movement of the clouds. A real fighter is aware of everything around them at all times. She flicked her wrist. One of her shadows silently rose behind Finn and tapped him lightly on the shoulder. He startled and spun around. Too slow, Naira said sternly. You were focused only on what was in front of you. Your enemy will not be so kind. She spent the rest of the morning drilling them on environmental awareness, making them fight while blindfolded, having them call out changes in the wind or temperature, and teaching them to feel the subtle shifts in the air when something moved nearby. By the end of the session, both twins were breathing hard and clearly frustrated, but they were improving. They were starting to notice things they had completely missed before. Naira finally called them to a stop. Better, she said, placing a hand on each of their heads. You are beginning to see with more than just your eyes. That is what will keep you alive. She glanced briefly in my direction. Her blindfolded face lingered on me for a moment, but she said nothing. I stayed on the wall, sore and quiet, watching her walk away with the twins. Even though my body hurt, I already knew I'd be back here tonight for another round of her brutal training sessions. And honestly, I couldn't wait. We were sitting together on the stone steps of the ruined chapel after training. Naira sat close enough that I could feel the faint warmth of her shadows brushing against my arm. She was quiet for a long moment before she spoke. Tell me about the accident, she said softly. The one that took your parents, that nearly took you. I felt my chest tighten. No one had asked me about that in a long time. I was in the car with them, I said, staring at my hands. We were driving home from my aunt's house. A truck ran a red light and hit us head on. My parents, they died instantly. I was pinned in the wreckage, bleeding out. I could feel myself slipping away. My voice got quieter. Then Livia found me. She turned me to save my life. 1 second I was dying, the next I was something else. A vampire. Naira stayed silent, letting me speak. I miss them, I admitted. A lot. Some days I miss my parents so much it hurts. And I miss the person I used to be. The normal kid who went to school, played video games, complained about homework. That version of me died in that car too. I let out a shaky breath.
I'm still trying to settle with who I am now. Some days I feel like I'm pretending to be this strong, confident person, like I'm just playing a role. But other days, I looked over at her, at the way her fiery red hair moved gently in the breeze, at the soft way her shadows curled toward me. Other days, I feel a lot fuller, especially since you've been here. Naira turned her blindfolded face toward me, her shadows stilling. You make me feel like I'm not just surviving anymore, I said honestly. You push me. You believe in me. You see me as more than Livia's fledgling or the kid who got turned by accident. You make me want to become someone better, someone stronger. And that makes all of this feel a little less heavy. I gave her a small, shy smile. You've become really important to me, Naira. More than I know how to say. Her shadows slowly reached out and wrapped gently around my hand, warm and steady. She was quiet for a long moment before she finally spoke, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. You don't have to pretend with me, Remy. You don't have to be the strong one all the time. I see you. I know exactly who you are, and I like him just fine.
The Scottish wind carried the sound of distant traffic from the road below the hill. One moment I was fine, walking back from training with Naira. The next, a truck's horn blared in the distance, loud, sharp, angry. It hit me like a freight train. The screech of tires, metal crushing metal. The smell of blood and gasoline. My mother's scream cut short. My father's hand reached for me right before everything went black. My knees buckled. I dropped to the grass, chest heaving, tears burning my eyes before I could stop them. A broken sob tore out of me as the memory slammed through my mind again and again. I couldn't breathe. Then she was there. Naira dropped to her knees in front of me. Her arms wrapped around me without hesitation, pulling me against her. One hand cradled the back of my head, while the other rubbed slow circles on my back. Her fiery red hair fell around us like a curtain, as her shadows gently curled around my shaking body. I've got you, she whispered, voice soft against my ear. I've got you, Remy. Breathe. I clung to her, face buried in her shoulder, letting the tears fall. She held me tighter, rocking me slightly, never once letting go. When the worst of it finally passed, I pulled back just enough to look at her. Blindfolded, surrounded by living shadows, and still the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I didn't think so. I just leaned in and kissed her. It was soft at first, hesitant. Then she kissed me back, her hands sliding up to cup my face. Her shadows tightened around us both, warm and protective. When we finally broke apart, Naira stood without a word and took my hand. She led me back inside the ruined chapel, straight to the small room I'd claimed as mine. The moment we stepped inside, she closed the door behind us with a quiet click. Later, the room was dark, except for the moonlight coming through the cracked window. Naira lay with her head on my bare chest, her long, fiery red hair spilled across my skin. My fingers moved slowly through her hair, stroking it gently, while her shadows lazily curled around my wrist. She was quiet for a long moment before she spoke. I didn't know it still hurt you that much, she whispered. I kept running my fingers through her hair. Some days it doesn't. Then a sound, a smell, and it's like I'm right back in that car. Naira shifted slightly, pressing closer. You don't have to carry it alone anymore, she said softly. Her fingers traced slow patterns on my chest. Not while I'm here. I smiled faintly and kissed the top of her head. I know. Her shadows tightened around me, warm and steady. And I'm not going anywhere. A few hours later, Naira and I lay tangled together in bed, the room dark except for the faint moonlight coming through the cracked window. We had just finished talking, her head resting on my chest, my fingers slowly running through her fiery red hair. Her breathing had finally grown steady again. She had fallen back asleep in my arms. I stayed awake a little longer, content just holding her. Then I felt it through our bond, pure terror. Naira's body suddenly jerked against mine. Her fingers dug hard into my chest as her breathing turned sharp and panicked. "Remy," she whispered, her voice tight with fear. "Remy, no, please." She cried out my name again, louder this time, clearly trapped in a nightmare. Without hesitation, I closed my eyes and reached for her through the bond, pushing my consciousness into her dream. Suddenly, I was standing in a burning wasteland. Naira stood frozen a few feet away, watching in horror as a version of me was chained and tortured by demonic figures. "Naira," I called out. She jerked her head toward me, eyes wide. "Remy?" I walked straight to her and took her face gently in my hands. "This isn't real," I said firmly. "I'm right here. I'm safe. This is just a dream. You're having a nightmare, love." Her hands came up to grip my wrists, trembling. "They're hurting you. I can't stop them." "It's not real," I repeated, softer this time. "I'm not in hell. I'm right here in bed with you. Feel me. I'm holding you. Come back to me." I pulled her close, wrapping my arms around her the same way I was holding her in reality. "You're safe. I'm safe. Let's leave this place together." The nightmare began to fracture around us. The burning wasteland faded. I stayed with her, holding her tightly until the dream completely dissolved and she slipped back into peaceful sleep in my arms. When I opened my eyes again, Naira was still pressed against my chest, her breathing now calm and steady. "Remy," she whispered, her voice tight with fear. "Remy, no, please." She cried out my name again, louder this time, clearly trapped in a nightmare. Without hesitation, I closed my eyes and reached for her through the bond, pushing my consciousness into her dream. Suddenly, I was standing in a burning wasteland. Naira stood frozen a few feet away, watching in horror as a version of me was chained and tortured by demonic figures. "Naira," I called out. She jerked her head toward me, eyes wide. "Remy?" I walked straight to her and took her face gently in my hands. "This isn't real," I said firmly. "I'm right here. I'm safe. This is just a dream. You're having a nightmare, love." Her hands came up to grip my wrists, trembling. "They're hurting you. I can't stop them." "It's not real," I repeated, softer this time. "I'm not in hell. I'm right here in bed with you. Feel me. I'm holding you. Come back to me." I pulled her close, wrapping my arms around her the same way I was holding her in reality. "You're safe. I'm safe. Let's leave this place together." The nightmare began to fracture around us. The burning wasteland faded. I stayed with her, holding her tightly until the dream completely dissolved, and she slipped back into peaceful sleep in my arms. When I opened my eyes again, Naira was still pressed against my chest, her breathing now calm and steady. "Remy," she whispered, her voice tight with fear. "Remy, no, please." She cried out my name again, louder this time, clearly trapped in a nightmare. Without hesitation, I closed my eyes and reached for her through the bond, pushing my consciousness into her dream. Suddenly, I was there in her dream, standing in a burning wasteland. Naira stood frozen a few feet away, watching in horror, as a version of me was chained and tortured by demonic figures. "Naira," I called out. She jerked her head toward me, eyes wide. "Remy!" I walked straight to her and took her face gently in my hands. "This isn't real," I said firmly. "I'm right here. I'm safe. This is just a dream. You're having a nightmare, love." Her hands came up to grip my wrists, trembling. "They're hurting you. I can't stop them." "It's not real," I repeated, softer this time. "I'm not in hell. I'm right here in bed with you. Feel me. I'm holding you. Come back to me." I pulled her close, wrapping my arms around her the same way I was holding her in reality. "You're safe. I'm safe. Let's leave this place together." The nightmare began to fracture around us. The burning wasteland faded. I stayed with her, holding her tightly until the dream completely dissolved and she slipped back into peaceful sleep in my arms. When I opened my eyes again, Naira was still pressed against my chest, her breathing now calm and steady.
The next morning I stood just outside the chapel, sipping tea and watching the sunrise paint the Scottish hills gold. The air was crisp and quiet. Naira appeared beside me without a sound, her long fiery red hair drifting slowly in the morning breeze. She spoke immediately, voice low. "Remy had a flashback last night. The accident. The truck horn triggered it. He broke down completely." I turned to look at her, concerned about tightening my chest. I held him while he cried. He told me everything. About his parents, about almost dying, about still missing who he used to be. Then he kissed me. She paused, her shadows curling gently around her. When he was breaking down, I felt something was wrong. It was this sudden, sharp pain in my chest. I could feel his terror, his pain. It was so strong that it broke my heart. I didn't understand what was happening. I just knew I had to get to him right away. I didn't realize it was the bond. She shook her head slightly. Later that same night, after we fell back asleep, I had a nightmare. I saw Remy being tortured in hell. I couldn't stop it. I was just forced to watch. I felt him reach for me through it. And then he was there, in the nightmare with me. He didn't just wake me up. He walked into that hellscape, took my face in his hands, and told me it wasn't real. He pulled me out of it. She finally looked up at me, her blindfolded face unusually vulnerable. I didn't know that was possible. What does that mean, Livia? That we have this kind of bond? I set my tea down slowly, taking a moment to process everything Shed just told me. It means your connection is much deeper than either of you realized, I said gently. This kind of mental bond is usually formed between a sire and their fledgling, but somehow, Remy has imprinted it upon you too. It actually makes sense. You've been teaching him how to be a warrior. You're guiding and protecting him like a mentor. That's the same kind of bond as a sire to a fledgling. I gave her hand a gentle squeeze. Plus, Remy's always had a crush on you. And now that you've become a couple, a serious one, that emotional connection has made the bond even stronger in a lot of ways. Love tends to do that. Naira stayed quiet for a long moment, her shadows drifting slowly around her. I'm not worried about it being broken, she said softly. I just wanted to know how it happened. He smiled at her. That's what a bond like yours feels like.
On the 7th day of training, Naira had transformed the entire clearing into a massive obstacle course. She had built wooden barriers, rock piles, fallen logs, and deep trenches across the field. At one end stood a tall wooden pole with a black flag. At the opposite end was another pole with a white flag. Victor and Livia stood beside me, both looking confused. Naira walked over to them with purpose. Here's the game, she said, voice firm. Victor and Livia, your job is to reach the twins' black flag. Twins, your job is to reach father and mother's white flag. At this moment, they are not your parents. Not on the training field, they're combatants. Neither side is allowed to hold back. Full force. No mercy. Livia's eyes widened. She immediately stepped forward, shaking her head. Naira, absolutely not. I'm not using my full power on two children. Naira turned her blindfolded face toward Livia, completely unfazed. If you hold back, you are doing them a disservice. In a real battle, their enemies will not be gentle. They will not hesitate. They will not show mercy. The only way these two will survive is if they learn how to fight against real power. She gestured toward the obstacle course. This is not a game. This is preparation. They need to learn how to move through chaos, how to coordinate under pressure, and how to push through when they're facing opponents stronger than they are. Livia still looked uneasy, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Victor glanced between the two women, staying quiet. Naira's voice softened just slightly, but stayed stern. They are not fragile, Livia. They are powerful. The sooner they learn to fight like it, the better their chances of surviving what's coming. If you coddle them now, you are only making them weaker for later. Livia was quiet for a long moment, clearly torn. Finally, she let out a heavy sigh and dropped her arms. Fine, but if I see either of them get seriously hurt, I'm stopping this immediately. Naira gave a single nod, satisfied. She turned toward the twins, who were already bouncing with nervous energy at their end of the course. Remember everything I've taught you, she called out to them. Use your surroundings, work together, and do not hesitate. Naira raised her hand and dropped it sharply. Begin! The twins shifted instantly, exploding into their massive hybrid wolf forms. Luna and Finn charged forward like twin storms, their paws thundering across the grass as they leapt over the first set of barriers. Victor and Livia moved at the same time. Victor launched himself forward with a burst of lightning crackling around his body, while Livia blurred into motion, moving like liquid shadow between the obstacles. The collision was immediate and chaotic. Luna and Finn worked in perfect sync. Luna vaulted off a rock pile and came down with a void-laced claw strike toward Victor. At the same moment, Finn used a low trench for cover and lunged at Livia from the side. Their timing was flawless, exactly what Naira had been drilling into them.
Victor twisted midair, lightning flashing as he redirected Luna's attack and sent her sliding across the dirt. Livia barely avoided Finn's lunge, rolling under him and coming up behind the massive wolf. "They're fast," Victor shouted, clearly impressed. "They're better than fast," Livia called back, already moving again. "They're coordinated." The fight became a whirlwind of movement across the obstacle course.
The twins used the terrain perfectly. Finn would draw attention by charging straight at Victor, while Luna used fallen logs and rock piles to launch devastating aerial attacks. When Livia tried to flank them, the twins would switch roles instantly, one covering while the other struck. But Victor and Livia were no slouches. Victor unleashed controlled bursts of lightning that forced the twins to dodge and weave through the obstacles. Livia used her insane speed to blur in and out of their blind spots, striking at joints and trying to knock them off balance. At one point, Luna managed to get close enough to slam a void-charged paw into Victor's chest, sending him crashing through a wooden barrier. Finn nearly reached the white flag before Livia appeared in front of him like a ghost and kicked him hard enough to send the giant wolf tumbling backward. The twins were breathing hard, but they never stopped moving. Their coordination was getting tighter with every clash. They were learning to read each other's movements without words, using the obstacles as weapons instead of just obstacles. Naira stood at the edge of the clearing, arms crossed, her head slightly tilted as she tracked every movement through her shadows. She hadn't said a word since the fight started, but her posture was proud. After nearly 10 minutes of brutal, non-stop fighting, Luna made one final, desperate lunge toward the white flag. She was so close, her claws actually brushed the pole, when Livia appeared in a burst of speed and tackled her to the ground. Victor reached the black flag at almost the same moment, snatching it from the pole with a victorious shout. "Enough," Naira called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. The twins collapsed onto the grass in their wolf forms, panting heavily, tongues lolling out. Victor and Livia were both breathing hard too, covered in dirt and grass stains. Naira walked slowly into the center of the course. She placed one hand on each of the twins' massive heads, stroking their fur gently. "You did well," she said, her voice warm with pride. "Very well. You used everything I taught you. I am proud of you both." Luna let out a tired but happy whine and nuzzled into Naira's hand. Finn's tail thumped weakly against the ground. Naira looked up at Victor and Livia. "They're ready," she said simply. "They're finally ready."
That night I was walking back toward the chapel with Livia when Naira suddenly appeared in front of us like a shadow detaching from the trees. Before either of us could say a word, she grabbed both our arms in a surprisingly strong grip and started pulling us toward the large grassy clearing beside the ruined chapel. Remy was already there, standing in the center of the open field. He looked tense but focused, like he knew exactly what was coming. Naira released us and stepped back, her long fiery red hair drifting slowly around her shoulders even though there was barely any wind. She turned her blindfolded face toward Livia and me, her voice calm but commanding. "Both of you. Same drill as earlier with the twins. No void powers," Naira cut in, looking directly at me. "Everything else is fair game. Blood weapons, go Victor, use lightning, use it all." She then turned her head toward Remy, her tone softening just slightly as she spoke to him. "Remy, I want you to try to take them down. As best as you can. Use everything you've learned. Use your senses, your blood weapons, your hands. Do not hold back. Not even for a second." Remy took a deep breath and nodded. His stance shifted, feet planted firmly. Two glowing crimson blood swords slowly formed along his forearms, the blades humming with power as he settled into the fighting stance Naira had drilled into him over the past week. Naira walked to the edge of the clearing and crossed her arms, shadows curling lazily through her hair. "Bijin." I didn't wait. Lightning crackled to life around my hands with a sharp snap. I fired a controlled bolt straight at Remy's chest, strong enough to test him, but not enough to seriously injure. Remy's eyes were closed, trusting completely in the senses Naira had trained. At the very last second, he twisted sharply. The lightning bolt screamed past his shoulder, close enough to singe his shirt. Livia was already moving, a blur of motion as she came in from his left side. She threw a rapid series of strikes, fast, precise, testing his defense. Remy's blood swords flashed up, blocking 2 blows cleanly before he countered with a crimson whip that cracked through the air, forcing Livia to leap backward. I pressed the attack immediately, closing the distance and throwing a lightning-charged punch. Remy met me head-on. The impact of my fist against his blood-hardened forearm rang out like striking metal. He was stronger than I expected, much stronger. We started working together, coordinating our assault. I attacked from the front with lightning and raw power while Livia flanked him with blinding speed. Remy was caught in the middle of a whirlwind, but he refused to break. He fought like someone who had finally stopped doubting himself. His enhanced senses let him track both of us at once, even with his eyes closed. Thin threads of blood lashed out to trip us up, while his swords moved in fluid, deadly arcs. At one point he actually managed to wrap a blood whip around Livia's ankle and yank her off balance, forcing her to roll across the grass. He followed up with a spinning kick that caught me in the ribs, sending me skidding back several feet. Sweat poured down his face. His breathing was ragged, but that proud, determined fire never left his eyes. After nearly 15 straight minutes of relentless fighting, I finally raised a hand and called out, "Enough!" We all stepped back, chests heaving. Remy was covered in sweat, dirt, and a few shallow cuts, but he was still standing. His shoulders rose and fell heavily as he lowered his blood swords, but a tired, proud grin had spread across his face. Livia wiped a streak of dirt from her cheek and laughed softly. "Not bad, kid. You actually got me with that whip." Naira walked slowly across the clearing toward Remy. The moment she reached him, she reached up and wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him close. She gently pressed her forehead against his, their faces only inches apart. Her long red hair fell around them like a curtain as her shadows curled softly around both of them, warm and protective. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered, her voice full of quiet emotion. "You've become such a warrior." She pulled back just slightly, the corner of her mouth twitching with that familiar smirk. "But don't get cocky." Remy smiled, resting his forehead back against hers, his hands gently holding her waist. "I want," he said softly, still breathing hard. "I've learned from the best."
Gulf of Mexico, slipping past harvester patrols, riding dying currents north through the Atlantic for days on end. My tail was torn, my scales cracked and dull, my gills raw from breathing air too long. Exhaustion and the burning toxin they had pumped into my veins nearly ended me more than once. But I kept going, because everything in the oceans had told me about them. Scotland. I had clung to the bottom of a fishing boat for dear life, holding on through freezing waves and howling storms until I could finally slip ashore and drag myself inland to this place before I collapsed completely. Now I lay on a low wooden frame padded with thick furs and blankets, the stone walls cool and damp around me. Lantern light flickered across the rough beams. Outside, the Scottish wind howled through the hills, carrying the faint, distant song of the sea I could still feel in my blood. The air smelled of pine smoke, earth, and the sharp metallic tang of blood alchemy. 2 people stood over me, a man and a woman. Even through my haze of pain, I could sense the unbreakable bond between them, the kind of love that made the ocean seem small by comparison. The woman knelt beside my cot, her cool hand resting gently on my shoulder. There was a mother's softness in her touch, a fierce protectiveness that made something tight in my chest loosen. "You're safe here," she whispered. The man crouched down, so we were eye to eye. His presence was powerful and steady, the air around him carrying the sharp scent of blood magic. "I had to feed you my blood," he said quietly, voice low and serious. "It was the only way to heal the damage the harvesters did. My blood carries powerful alchemy, but I don't know exactly what the side effects will be. There will likely be more, but I can already see one clear change. Your tail has turned into legs. Well, face whatever else comes together as it happens." I blinked slowly, feeling the truth of his words deep in my veins. The burning toxin was already fading. My torn scales itched as they knit back together faster than they ever should. A strange new power hummed beneath my skin, warm and electric, like the sea itself had been woven into my blood. And yes, where my tail had been, I now had legs, human and whole. The change was real. I could feel the floor beneath them even as I lay there. I feel it, I rasped, my voice stronger than it had been moments ago. The power, the legs. Thank you. I would have died without it. The man gave a small, solemn nod. You're part of this fight now. The woman's hand never left my shoulder. Tell us everything. Before I could speak, I realized I didn't even know their names. I took a shaky breath and introduced myself first. My name is Saren, I said softly. What your people would call a mermaid. Guardian of the deeper currents. The woman smiled gently. Livia Stormforge. This is my husband, Victor. Victor's gaze stayed steady as he added. And this is Naira. She's part of our family as well. He nodded toward the shadows near the door, where a woman with long red hair and a blindfold over her eyes stepped forward. She's been training the twins and standing with us through everything. Livia continued. That's Remy, my fledgling and part of our family. She then nodded toward the corner where two silver-haired children hovered, watching me with wide, curious eyes. And those are our twins, Luna and Finn. The girl, Luna, gave a small shy wave. The boy, Finn, stayed half hidden behind his sister but offered a tentative nod. It's an honor to meet all of you, I said, a faint smile tugging at my lips despite the pain. I studied all of them carefully. The way Victor and Livia stood shoulder to shoulder without needing words. The way Remy hovered protectively nearby. The way Naira sensed everything with that dangerous, quiet calm. This was not just a group of fighters. This was a family. I forced my cracked lips to move, my voice like waves breaking on sharp rocks. I traveled a long way to find you, I rasped. Everything in the oceans has told me how strong this family is. How you are standing up against the aliens who are looting the Earth's resources. The currents whispered your names. Victor Stormforge and Livia. A family that fights the metal devils without fear. When the harvesters began killing the ley lines beneath the seafloor, I knew I had to come to you. I left my sisters behind in the poison gulf. I swam through patrols and toxin clouds because I believed you might be the ones who could help us. Victor's gaze stayed steady, the scent of his blood magic still thick in the air. We're listening, he said quietly. I took a shaky breath, gills flaring weakly against the dry air, the new power from his blood already easing the pain. They're not just draining the surface waters. They're going deeper, much deeper. The metal devils, the harvesters, are drilling into the seafloor itself, ripping out the ley lines that hold the oceans together. Those lines are the veins of magic that keep the currents alive, that feed the coral cities, that sing to the great beasts who have slept for centuries. They're stealing the very lifeblood of the sea. Livia's hand tightened slightly on my shoulder. I could see the quiet fury building behind her calm expression. How long do we have? She asked. A few days, I whispered. Maybe less. If the Gulf collapses, the ripple will spread to the Atlantic, the Pacific. All of them. The balance is breaking. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the ley lines beneath Scotland speak to me. Even this far inland, I could feel the wrongness spreading like a bruise across the world, sharper now, thanks to Victor's blood. And if the Guardian wakes while still in pain, the Kraken, it will not distinguish between friend and enemy. It has slept for centuries, watching over the deep. The harvesters have found it. They have latched onto its body like parasites, pumping it full of toxins, forcing it to serve them. If it rises in rage, it will destroy everything in its path, ships, coasts, entire cities. But if we can reach it first, if we can free it and show it that not all surface dwellers are enemies, it could become our greatest ally in this war. Your blood magic could help create the lightning storms we need to drive the harvesters back. Remy stepped closer, gripping his blood swords tightly. The young vampire looked nervous, but determined. Your blood magic could help create the lightning storms we need to drive the harvesters back. Remy stepped closer, gripping his blood swords tightly. The young vampire looked nervous, but determined. Then tell us how to help, he said. I'm ready. We all are. From the shadows, Naira's calm voice carried quiet strength. The sea is not my domain, but if it needs warriors, it has them. Before anyone could answer, Livia's communicator buzzed sharply on the table. She picked it up, her expression shifting as she answered. Garrick, she said, voice tight. What is it? The voice on the other end was urgent, clipped. Livia, it's Garrick. My informant in Tokyo, Jax, just made contact. He has critical information. He won't risk it over any channel. He needs to meet you or Victor in person right now. Tokyo. Can you get there? Livia's eyes met Victor's, for a single heartbeat. The decision passed between them without words. It'll take the twins, she said firmly. Well, call one of the Unity Wizards for a portal. Victor nodded once, his hand resting on her shoulder. Remy and Naira stay with Saren and me. Well, start planning the ocean side here. The Kraken, the ley lines. We can't leave the sea undefended. Livia turned to the twins, who had been listening quietly from the corner. Luna, Finn, we're going to Tokyo. Stay close to me. The twins stood without hesitation, silver eyes bright with determination. They hugged Victor and Naira quickly, then Remy, before moving to Livia's side. I watched it all from my cot, the new power in my blood humming as the family split right in front of me. Livia and the twins would face whatever waited in Tokyo. Victor, Remy, and Naira would remain here with me, guarding the Scottish safe house and preparing for the war beneath the waves. Livia looked back at me one last time, her voice steady and warm. We'll be back as soon as we can. The oceans won't fight alone. Victor placed a hand on Livia's shoulder, his gaze locked on mine, the scent of blood magic still strong around him. The war at sea has begun, he said quietly. And we're answering the call. A small spark of real hope ignited in my chest, faint, but warmer than anything I had felt since the draining began. These people were exactly what the oceans had described, strong, united, and willing to fight for something greater than themselves. That kind of fire could change tides. And now, with Victor's blood singing inside me and my new legs beneath me, I felt that same fire beginning to burn in my own veins. I reached out with a trembling, webbed hand and took Livia's. My fingers were weak, but my grip was grateful. Thank you, I whispered, for listening, for believing a mermaid who traveled halfway across the world because the entire ocean told her this family would answer. Livia squeezed my hand gently, her smile small but fierce. We're family now, she said, new power in my blood humming as the family split right in front of me. Livia and the twins would face whatever waited in Tokyo. Victor, Remy, and Naira would remain here with me, guarding the Scottish safe house and preparing for the war beneath the waves. Livia looked back at me one last time, her voice steady and warm. We'll be back as soon as we can. The oceans won't fight alone. Victor placed a hand on Livia's shoulder, his gaze locked on mine, the scent of blood magic still strong around him. The war at sea has begun, he said quietly. And we're answering the call. A small spark of real hope ignited in my chest, faint, but warmer than anything I had felt since the draining began. These people were exactly what the oceans had described, strong, united, and willing to fight for something greater than themselves. That kind of fire could change tides. And now, with Victor's blood singing inside me and my new legs beneath me, I felt that same fire beginning to burn in my own veins. I reached out with a trembling, webbed hand and took Livia's. My fingers were weak, but my grip was grateful. Thank you, I whispered, for listening, for believing a mermaid who traveled halfway across the world because the entire ocean told her this family would answer. Livia squeezed my hand gently, her smile small but fierce. We're family now, she said simply. And family answers the call. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, we stepped out of the Unity hidden portal into a narrow back alley in Tokyo. The air was thick with the smell of rain on concrete and distant street food. Neon signs bled pink and blue across wet pavement. The twins froze the second we emerged. Luna's silver eyes went wide, her small hand tightening around mine. Finn pressed closer to my side, ears twitching at the distant roar of traffic and the chatter of a city that never truly slept. "Mother, what is this place?" Luna whispered, voice full of wonder and a little fear. "Everything's so bright and loud, and there are so many people." The buildings touched the sky. Finn tilted his head, staring up at the towering glass and steel structures. "It smells like food and metal and rain all at once. I've never seen so many lights, or so many people moving like this. Is this what the human world is really like?" I squeezed their hands gently, my heart aching at how new and overwhelming everything must feel to them. They had spent their lives chained in the Siberian wilderness or hidden away. Civilization was brand new to them. "This is Tokyo, little wolves," I said softly. "One of the largest cities in the world. Stay close. We're here to meet people who can help us understand what's happening to our family." They nodded, but their eyes kept darting everywhere, to the glowing vending machines, the salarymen with umbrellas, the massive screens flashing advertisements. Every news site pulled a question from them. We moved quickly through side streets until we reached a nondescript door tucked between a ramen shop and a tiny shrine. Jax was already waiting inside, flanked by 3 of his cyber sisters, Kira, Sable, and Nyx. They looked ready for war, sharp-eyed, with glowing lines of tech and magic running along their arms and subtle shadows that sometimes moved on their own. Jax grinned when he saw us, though it faltered the moment his gaze landed on the twins. Well, you actually made it. And you brought the kids." He crouched a little, studying Luna and Finn with open curiosity. Luna stepped half behind me. "Who are you?" "Imyux. Friend of your dad's." "Sort of. And these are my sisters. Not by blood, by code and magic. Kira, Sable, Nyx. They keep me from getting myself killed." The twins stared at the glowing lines on the sisters' skin and the way their shadows sometimes shifted independently. Before anyone could say more, the air in the far corner of the room shimmered. A tall Japanese man stepped out of a ripple of golden light. His long dark hair was tied back, and faint scales shimmered along his jaw and the backs of his hands. His eyes burned with ancient fire. "Ryu Jinkai." He looked straight at the twins and stopped dead. "My God," he breathed. "You two have grown. I remember when you were both babies, strapped to monitors in that lab, screaming every time they tried to measure the void inside you." The words hit like a physical blow. My first question came out sharp. "The twins. Lab?" Jean's expression softened with regret. "I'm sorry. I should have eased into it. But yes, they were created there." My second question came out colder. "What the hell is Helix?" Jax rubbed the back of his neck. "Right. We should probably sit down for this." I didn't move. My voice was low and dangerous. "We need to speak alone. Now, someone take the twins into the other room. Give them something to eat. They've had enough shocks for one day." Kira nodded quickly and gently guided Luna and Finn toward a side door, murmuring something about hot chocolate and stories. The twins looked back at me uncertain, but I gave them a small nod. Once the door closed, I rounded on Jax and Jean, eyes flashing with barely contained fury. "You do not drop something like that in front of my children," I hissed. "They have been through hell. They just learned they have powers that scare even werewolves. And now you tell them they were made in a lab? Like weapons? Like tools?" Jean bowed his head slightly. "You're right. I apologize. Old habits from when I had to move fast or die." Jax held up both hands. "We didn't mean to blindside you. But time isn't exactly on our side." I took a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm even as my hands trembled. "Then take it from the top. Tell me everything. Who is Helix? Why are they working with the aliens? And what do they want with my children?" Jean spoke first, voice steady. "Helix Corporation is a human organization that has been experimenting with supernatural DNA for decades. They started small, trying to create better soldiers, better spies. Then they made contact with the aliens. Or rather, the aliens made contact with them. The Harvesters offered Helix a deal. Help us locate and secure certain resources on this planet, and we will give you godhood. Immortality. Your own universes to rule once we break everything open." My jaw tightened. "And Helix believed them?" "They're desperate," Jack said. Most of their leadership is old, dying, or terrified of becoming irrelevant. The aliens promise them everything they ever wanted. In return, Helix provides research facilities, test subjects, and black site security while the aliens strip mine Earth's water, rare earth minerals, and ley lines. My voice was ice. And the twins? Jean's golden eyes dimmed. They were created as living batteries for something called Project Eclipse. The aliens discovered that the void exists across multiple dimensions. It's the only known energy that can safely interface with the machine they're building, a device that doesn't rewrite the universe, but pulls every connected universe and multiverse into one place at the same time. Once everything is stacked on top of each other, they can strip mine infinite worlds simultaneously instead of traveling from reality to reality. I felt the floor tilt under me. I pressed a hand to my chest as if I could physically hold back the wave of protective terror and rage rising inside me. They want to use my children as living power sources to destroy every reality at once, I said, voice cracking. Yes, Jean said quietly. Luna and Finn were engineered with unstable but extremely potent void signatures. The lab that made them was one of several. I was the first successful hybrid they created, dragon DNA fused with Victor's bloodline. When I realized what they planned to do with the next generation, I escaped. I took the twins with me when they were infants. I dropped them with the Siberian pack because I knew the wolves would protect them, and because I couldn't keep running with two babies while being hunted by ravagers. My hands trembled harder. I pressed them flat against the table to steady myself. The anger was still there, but beneath it was something colder and deeper. The raw horror of a mother learning her children had been created as fuel. You left them in Siberia, I said, voice breaking slightly. Chained. Feral. Alone. I had no choice, Jean answered. The ravagers were already closing in. If I had stayed with them, we would all be dead or back in cages. I made the only call I could. I closed my eyes for a long moment. When I opened them, my voice was steady again, but my eyes burned with fierce, protective fire. Tell me how you know all this. How did you get into their systems? Jax leaned forward. We hacked their mothership. Not with normal tech, with a mix of magic and code the Cyber Sisters developed. We siphoned terabytes of data before they caught on. That's how we learned about the twins, about you and Victor, about the true purpose of the machine. The aliens aren't just harvesting Earth. They're preparing to fold every reality together so they can consume everything at once. Helix thinks they'll be rewarded. They're wrong. The moment the machine activates, Helix becomes as expendable as the rest of us. I absorbed it all in silence. My mind raced through every implication. The danger to my children, the betrayal of trust, the sheer scale of what we were facing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to burn something down. Instead, I forced myself to think like a mother and a warrior who would tear the world apart before letting anyone touch her family. We need to move, I said at last. If Helix knows the twins are here, they won't send just drones next time. As if summoned by my words, the building's alarms began to wail. 3 ravagers dropped through the ceiling in a shower of shattered concrete and twisted metal. They were nightmares, half dragon, half alien tech, their bodies a grotesque fusion of scales, glowing circuitry, and writhing biomechanical limbs. Their eyes burned with unstable, void-tainted energy. The moment they landed, they roared and lunged straight for the twins. Get behind me, Jean shouted, golden flames igniting along his arms as he shifted partially into his draconic form. Scales rippled across his skin. His hands became clawed weapons of fire and light. My blood answered my rage. I slashed my palm and the crimson liquid whipped outward, hardening into razor-sharp lashes that cracked through the air. One ravager took a blood whip across the face and screamed as the alchemy burned through its hybrid flesh. The Cyber Sisters moved as one. Kira's hands blurred over a holographic interface while Sable and Nyx sent pulses of disruptive magic into the Ravager's systems, trying to overload their unstable DNA tech bond. Luna and Finn didn't hesitate. They shifted into their hybrid wolf forms, larger than any normal werewolf, silver fur bristling, claws and fangs gleaming. They flanked me instinctively, protecting me as much as I protected them. The first Ravager charged. Jean met it head-on, breathing a torrent of golden fire that forced the creature back. My blood whips wrapped around its legs and yanked hard, sending it crashing into a support pillar. The second Ravager tried to flank us. Finn lunged, sinking his teeth into its biomechanical arm and tearing out a spray of black ichor and sparking wires. Luna leaped onto its back, claws raking deep furrows through scales and circuits. The third Ravager was faster. It slammed into me, driving me into the wall hard enough to crack concrete. Pain flared through my ribs, but I snarled and drove both blood whips straight through its chest. The creature convulsed as my alchemy flooded its systems, turning its own unstable energy against it. Together, I shouted through the mind link to the twins. Luna and Finn answered instantly. They coordinated without words, Luna drawing the Ravager's attention while Finn struck low, hamstringing it. Jean followed up with a devastating blast of dragon fire that cooked the creature from the inside. The battle turned brutal and close quarters. The Ravagers were stronger than drones, faster than normal hybrids, and driven by something that felt almost insane. One of them caught Jax across the chest with a clawed limb, sending him flying. Kira screamed his name but kept fighting, flooding the creature's neural pathways with cascading errors. I felt the old familiar burn of blood alchemy pushing my limits. I could taste copper and ozone. Every whip strike, every slash, carried the weight of a mother protecting her children from monsters that had been built to use them as fuel. Jean roared and fully shifted one arm into a massive draconic limb, slamming a Ravager into the floor hard enough to crater it. They're unstable. Keep hitting the joints where the tech meets flesh. The Cyber Sisters finally found a rhythm. Sable overloaded one Ravager's core while Nyx and Kira worked in tandem to sever its connection to the others. It collapsed in a twitching heap of melting scales and fried circuitry. The last Ravager went berserk. It grabbed Luna by the throat and lifted her off the ground. My vision went red. I didn't think, I simply moved. Blood exploded from my wrists in twin spears that punched straight through the creature's eyes and into its brain. At the same moment, Finn and Jean struck together, Finn tearing into its midsection while Jean drove a flaming claw through its spine. The Ravager dropped Luna. She hit the ground coughing but alive. I was at her side in an instant, pulling her into a fierce embrace while the last sparks of the creature died. Jean stood over the three fallen Ravagers, breathing hard, golden flames slowly fading from his hands. "They'll send more," he said grimly. "These were just the first wave. Helix knows you're here now." I helped Luna to her feet, one arm still around my daughter. Finn pressed against my other side, trembling slightly but trying to look brave. I looked at Jax and the sisters, then at Jean. "Then we don't stay here," I said. "We take what we need and we go. My children are not batteries. They are not weapons. And I will burn every last one of these monsters before I let Helix or the aliens touch them again." Jean met my eyes and nodded once, respect and shared pain in his gaze. "Welcome to the real war, Livia Stormforge." We moved fast after that. Jax and the sisters gathered data cores while Jean led us toward a hidden exit. The twins stayed close, quieter now, the wonder of Tokyo replaced by the cold reality of what they truly were. As we slipped into the rainy night, I kept one hand on each of my children and the other ready to draw blood at a moment's notice. The Helix Corporation had just made its first mistake. They had shown themselves to a mother who would tear the world apart to keep her family safe. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I was already planning exactly how I was going to make them pay. Back in Scotland. The next morning we moved fast. Victor called one of the Unity wizards, and a shimmering portal opened in the safe house. 3 Unity wizards stepped through with us. They would stay and fight alongside us. We emerged on the Gulf Coast, the salty air thick with tension. Before we even touched the water, I reached out with my senses and called to the ocean itself. The ancient packs stirred beneath the waves. The sea answered. The water churned violently and exploded upward as ghostly ships burst through the surface. Grace O'Malley's majestic galleon rose first, her red hair whipping in the spectral wind, cutlass raised high. Chinese junks commanded by Qingxi followed, then and Bonnie and Mary Reed's sleek sloop, along with warships led by other legendary pirate queens. The entire Ghost Fleet had answered the call. Grace leapt from her galleon onto the pier, eyes blazing. "You the ones fighting the metal devils?" Victor stepped forward. "We are." A fierce grin split her face. "Then climb aboard, loves. Let's give 'em hell." We rushed onto the ships. I boarded Grace's galleon with Victor, Remy, and Naira. The three Unity wizards each took command of a separate vessel, their magic already crackling around them. The ghost fleet formed up, sails catching an unearthly wind. The moment we were ready, the harvesters struck. Dozens of alien machines exploded out of the water. Massive drilling rigs, swarms of flying probes, and heavily armored war machines, all bristling with red sensors and spinning blades. They came at us from every direction. Grace raised her cutlass and roared across the fleet. "All ships, fire!" The ghost cannons thundered. Spectral cannonballs streaked through the air in glowing blue arcs, slamming into the harvesters with devastating force. Metal exploded and twisted as the barrage ripped through their ranks. Victor stood at the railing, slamming his hands down. Crimson blood lightning erupted across the water, chaining from machine to machine, frying circuits and melting armor. The smell of ozone and burning metal filled the air. Remy moved like a blur, leaping from ship to ship using bursts of blood magic. His twin crimson swords flashed as he carved through flying probes midair, slicing them into scrap before they could reach our fleet. Naira stood beside me, her shadows writhing with power. She thrust her hands forward and spears of pure darkness shot out like arrows, piercing through harvester armor and exploding inside their cores. She shaped more shadows into massive tendrils that whipped across the battlefield, smashing machines out of the sky and dragging them screaming into the sea. The three Unity wizards were just as terrifying. One summoned walls of roaring flame that turned entire squads of probes to molten slag. Another conjured howling gales that hurled machines into each other, smashing them apart. The third wove intricate spells of pure force, crushing harvesters midair like tin cans. I stood at the bow of Grace's galleon and called on the sea. Massive pillars of water erupted around our ships, forming into razor-sharp blades and crushing fists. I sent them smashing into the enemy lines, cleaving through armor plating and crushing metal frames. With a sweep of my arms, I shaped a gigantic water serpent that coiled through the air, slamming into a massive drilling rig and tearing it apart. The kraken's roar suddenly shook the entire gulf. The great beast finally broke free, its enormous tentacles whipping through the water. One massive limb slammed down, crushing three harvesters into scrap metal. Another gently brushed against Grace's galleon, acknowledging our alliance. Grace laughed wildly from beside me. "That's it, you glorious bastard. Show them who rules these waters." The battle raged across the surface for what felt like hours. Ghost ships weaved through the chaos, cannons never stopping. Victor's lightning lit up the sky. Remy's blades flashed constantly. Naira's shadows danced like living nightmares, piercing and crushing everything they touched. The Unity wizards unleashed devastating spells from their separate ships, each one carving through the enemy like a force of nature. My water constructs rose and fell in devastating waves, smashing anything the others missed. Harvesters exploded one after another. The air filled with the sounds of cannon fire, crackling magic, screaming metal, and the roar of the kraken. Twisted wreckage rained down into the sea. When the last harvester finally sank beneath the waves in a cloud of bubbles and debris, an eerie silence fell. The kraken gave one final, deep cry not of pain, but of gratitude, before slowly sinking back into the depths, now our ally. We stood on the deck, breathing hard, seawater and sweat dripping from our bodies. Grace O'Malley clapped me hard on the shoulder, grinning from ear to ear. "Not bad, mermaid. The sea chose its champions well today." I looked out over the water, feeling the ley lines beneath us pulse stronger than before. The balance was beginning to return. The first major battle for the oceans had been won. The last twisted piece of harvester wreckage finally slipped beneath the waves. Silence fell across the gulf, broken only by the gentle lap of water against the hulls of the ghost ships. I stood at the bow of Grace O'Malley's galleon, breathing hard, my new legs still unsteady beneath me. All around us, the spectral fleet bobbed on the water, sails glowing softly in the fading light. The three Unity wizards stood on their respective vessels, their magic slowly dimming as the adrenaline faded. Victor, Remy, and Naira remained on the deck with me and Grace. The Kraken had slipped back into the deep, but I could still feel its presence, watchful, grateful, and now allied with us. Grace O'Malley lowered her cutlass and let out a long, satisfied breath. She turned to me, a wild grin still on her face. "Well fought, mermaid. You've got fire in you. The sea chose wisely when it sent you to that family." I managed a tired smile. "Thank you. All of you. Without the Ghost Fleet, we wouldn't have stood a chance." Grace clapped me on the shoulder, her touch surprisingly solid for a spirit. "The pact is honored. But this fight isn't over, is it?" I shook my head. "No. The harvesters are attacking other parts of the ocean too. They're trying to siphon ley lines across the Atlantic. We can't let them." Grace's eyes gleamed. She turned toward her crew and bellowed, "You heard the lady. We're not done yet. All ships, prepare to sail." The Ghost Fleet responded with a roaring cheer that echoed across the water. Sails snapped taut as an ethereal wind filled them. Grace looked back at Victor, Remy, and Naira. "You three, you've got your own war to fight on land. Go back to your safe house. We'll take the mermaid and keep hunting these bastards across the seas." Victor stepped forward, his expression serious. He looked at me for a long moment, then at the fleet of glowing ships. "Protect her," he said simply, "and burn every last one of those machines you find." Grace gave him a sharp nod. "With pleasure." I turned to Victor, Remy, and Naira. "Thank you for everything. Tell Livia. Tell the family I'm with them, even when I'm not on land." Naira gave me a small, respectful nod. Remy offered a quick, fierce smile. Victor placed a hand on my shoulder, his voice low but warm. "You're family now, Saren. The ocean has you, but so do we." One of the Unity wizards opened a portal on the deck. Victor, Remy, and Naira stepped through it, vanishing back toward Scotland. I stood at the railing and watched them go. Victor was the last to step through. He paused for a moment, turning to look back at the Ghost Fleet. His eyes swept across the glowing ships, the spectral pirate queens standing at their helms, and finally landed on me. For a few seconds he just stood there, watching us all sail away into the sunset, the orange light catching on the ethereal sails. Then he gave one final nod and stepped through the portal. The portal closed behind him with a soft shimmer. Grace came up beside me, resting her arms on the railing. "He's a good one, that Victor. Strong. You've got powerful allies, girl." I looked out over the water, feeling the ley lines beneath us beginning to heal. "We all do now." Grace raised her cutlass high. "All right, ladies. The mermaid says there's more of those metal devils out there. Let's go hunting." The Ghost Fleet let out another thunderous cheer. Sails caught the wind, and the ships began to turn, cutting through the waves toward the open Atlantic where more harvesters waited. I stood tall at the bow, the sea wind in my face, the power of the ocean and Victor's blood still singing in my veins. The war beneath the waves had truly begun, and I was sailing straight into it with the most legendary fleet the ocean had ever seen.
Epilogue. I was half asleep when Naira walked into our room in the Scottish safe house. The fire in the hearth had burned low, casting long shadows across the stone walls and the thick furs on the bed. She closed the door softly behind her, but I could feel the shift in her through the bond we shared, that quiet, steady thread that had grown stronger every day since we started training together. Tonight, it felt different, tighter, like she was carrying something heavy. I sat up, rubbing my eyes. "Naira? Everything okay?" She stood there for a moment, hands clasped in front of her, the faint glow of the fire catching on her long red hair and the blindfold she still wore even indoors. Her shadows were calm, but I could sense the tiny tremor in them. She took a slow breath. "I have something to tell you," she said, voice quieter than usual, "and I need you to listen before you say anything." My heart gave a hard thud. For one stupid second, I thought she was going to say she was leaving, that the training was over, or that she decided a vampire and a shadow witch from hell didn't belong together. The bond flared with my sudden worry, and I felt her pick up on it immediately. She stepped closer, stopping right in front of me. It's not bad, Remy. At least, I don't think it is. I reached out and took her hands. They were cooler than usual, but steady. Then tell me, whatever it is, we face it together. You know that. Naira squeezed my fingers once, then let go and placed one of my hands gently against her stomach. The gesture was so simple, so deliberate, that it took my brain a second to catch up. I'm pregnant, she said, the words falling softly into the quiet room. We're going to have a child. The world tilted. For a heartbeat, I just stared at her, my hand still pressed to the flat plane of her belly. Vampires can't have children. That was one of the first things Livia taught me after she turned me. The price of immortality. No bloodline. No future in that way. I had accepted it. I had mourned it quietly in the nights, when I thought about what I'd lost when my parents died and Livia saved me. And yet here, Naira was, telling me we were going to have a child. How? The word came out hoarse. Vampires were not supposed to be able to. I know. Her voice was soft, almost wondering. I didn't believe it at first either, but the signs are there. The bond let me feel it before my own body could confirm it. I've been carrying this for weeks, trying to understand it. I think your blood, my shadow magic, the training, the way we've opened ourselves to each other, something changed. The rules bent, or maybe broke. I felt her worry through the bond again, sharp and vulnerable, the way she had felt in the nightmare where I was being tortured in hell. She was afraid I would pull away, afraid I would see this as a complication instead of a miracle. I stood up slowly, pulled her into my arms, and buried my face in her hair. A child, I whispered, the words tasting like wonder and terror and joy all at once. Our child. Naira let out a shaky breath against my chest, her arms wrapping tight around me. I was scared to tell you. I didn't know how you'd react. Vampires were not built for this, but I felt it the moment it happened. This tiny spark of life that's half me and half you, half shadow and half blood.
I couldn't keep it from you any longer. I pulled back just enough to rest my forehead against hers, my hand still gently on her stomach. I'm not scared, I told her, even though my heart was hammering. I'm in awe. I thought I lost the chance to ever have a family like this when I became what I am. And now you're giving me one. With you. A small, rare smile curved her lips. You're not angry? Angry? I laughed softly, the sound cracking with emotion. Naira, I love you. This is the best thing that's ever happened to me. We're going to have a baby. A little one who probably have your shadows and my terrible sword skills. She let out a quiet laugh that sounded like relief and wonder mixed together. Her shadows curled around us both, warm and protective, as if already shielding the new life inside her. We'll figure out the rest, she whispered. The pregnancy, the birth, what it means for a child born of a shadow witch and a blood vampire. But right now, I just needed you to know. I kissed her then, slow, deep, full of everything I couldn't put into words. When we finally broke apart, I kept my hand on her stomach, marveling at the impossible truth resting there. We're going to be parents, I said, the words still feeling like a dream. Naira rested her head on my shoulder. Yes, and the oceans, the aliens, Helix, none of it gets to take this from us. We fight for them too now. Outside, the Scottish wind whispered through the hills. Inside, the fire crackled softly. And for the first time since this war began, the future felt like something worth dreaming about. We were no longer just two broken people finding each other in the middle of a war. We were becoming a family.
The fire crackled softly in the stone fireplace, casting warm, flickering light across our bedroom. I lay on my back in bed, one arm behind my head, staring up at the wooden beams on the ceiling. My body was still sore from the fight in the Gulf, but sleep just wouldn't come. Too many thoughts running through my head. My phone suddenly rang on the nightstand. I picked it up and saw Livia's name on the screen. I answered immediately. "Hey, is everything all right over there?" Livia's voice came through, tight and urgent. "Victor, I need you to listen carefully. Get out of bed, go into the living room right now, open your laptop, and switch it to secure mode. Jax just dumped everything on us. You need to see this immediately." I sat up fast, already swinging my legs off the bed. "What's going on? Are the twins okay?" "They're fine, but this involves them deeply. I'm staying on the phone with you. Go." I stood up and walked barefoot into the living room, the cold stone floor waking me up the rest of the way. The laptop was on the big oak table where we'd been planning earlier. I flipped it open, powered it on, and quickly entered the secure boot sequence we'd set up. "All right, I'm booting it up now," I told her, keeping the phone to my ear. "Secure mode is running." "Good," Livia said, her voice low. "Files are coming to you now. Open them as soon as they land." The laptop chimed. Several encrypted files appeared in the secure folder. I double-clicked the first one and started reading. My stomach dropped. These are lab reports," I said quietly, scrolling through dense medical and genetic documents. "Livia, the twins were created in a lab. Engineered. They weren't born like normal kids." "I know," she said softly on the other end. "Jax confirmed it. The twins already know that part, that they were created in a lab. But they don't know the rest of it." I kept scrolling, my grip tightening on the phone as I read further. The deeper files painted a much darker picture. Helix Corporation hadn't just created them. They had designed Luna and Finn from the ground up to function as living void batteries, their bodies built to store and channel massive amounts of void energy. They were weapons. Power sources. Something to be used and controlled. My jaw clenched hard. "They made them to be batteries," I said, voice low and rough. "The twins were never meant to be children. They were built for this war. For whatever Helix is planning with the aliens." Livia stayed quiet for a moment, letting me process it. "They only know they were created in a lab," she finally said. "Nothing about the void battery part. Nothing about what Helix actually intended them for. Jax brought proof of all of it. Test logs, genetic blueprints, everything." I leaned back in the chair, staring at the damning files glowing on the screen while the fire popped beside me. The weight of what I was reading settled heavily in my chest. "They're still our kids," I said firmly, even as anger burned in my veins. "Lab or no lab, that doesn't change anything." "I know," Livia replied, her voice soft but steady. "But we needed to know what we're really up against. We'll tell them the full truth when the time is right. Together, as a family." I nodded even though she couldn't see me, eyes still locked on the screen. "I'll keep reading through all of this tonight," I told her. "Stay safe over there. And keep the twins close." "I will," she said. "I'll be home soon. I love you." "I love you too." I stayed on the line with her a little longer, the fire slowly dying in the hearth, both of us sitting in heavy silence as the full truth about our twins stared back at me from the laptop.
I had been sitting on the edge of the bed in the small, dimly lit bedroom, watching over the twins. Finn had finally drifted off, his breathing slow and even, but Luna was still awake, staring at the ceiling with those wide silver eyes that always seemed to carry too much weight for her age. I gently brushed a strand of hair from her forehead and whispered, "Try to rest, little one. We'll be right here." She gave me a small nod, but I could see the exhaustion and confusion still lingering on her face. I waited a few more minutes until her eyelids grew heavy, then stood up quietly and slipped out of the room, closing the door softly behind me. The moment I stepped into the hallway, something felt wrong. Luna wasn't with me. My heart gave a sharp lurch. I scanned the narrow corridor, then moved quickly but silently through the safe house, checking every corner. Panic started to rise in my chest. This wasn't like her. She knew better than to wander off in a place like this, especially after everything we'd just learned. Then I heard low voices coming from the back room where Jax and Jean were talking. I crept closer, heart pounding, and peered around the corner. There she was. Luna was crouched low behind a stack of metal crates, completely hidden in the shadows, listening intently to every word Jax and Jean were saying. They weren't just created in a lab, Jax was saying, his voice grim. Helix engineered them specifically to function as living void batteries. Their bodies were designed to store and channel massive amounts of void energy. That's why their power is so unstable. They were built as weapons, as fuel for whatever Helix is planning with the aliens. Jean nodded beside him. The files confirm it. They were never meant to have a normal life. They were created to be used. Drained. Controlled. Luna's small body was trembling. Her hands were clenched into tight fists at her sides, and I could see the tears starting to form in her eyes. Even though she already knew she had been created in a lab and that Jean had been the one to drop them off in Siberia with the wolf pack, hearing the full, brutal extent of what Helix had designed them for, that they were nothing more than living batteries, was clearly devastating to her. I moved silently behind her and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. She startled hard, but I leaned down and whispered softly in her ear before she could make a sound. "Luna, come with me, sweetheart." She looked up at me with wide, shattered silver eyes, tears already spilling down her cheeks. I helped her stand and quietly guided her away from the crates, back down the hallway toward our bedroom where Finn was still sleeping. Once we were far enough away that we couldn't be overheard, I knelt in front of her and cupped her face with both hands, wiping away her tears with my thumbs. "You heard everything?" I asked gently. Luna could only nod, her lips trembling. Through their twin bond, I felt a sharp spike of shock and pain hit me from Finn's direction. He had heard every word too, even from the bedroom. The bond between them pulsed violently as the full weight of the revelation settled over both of them at once. I pulled Luna into my arms and held her tightly against me, stroking her silver hair as she buried her face in my shoulder. "I'm so sorry you had to hear it like this," I whispered, my own voice thick with emotion. "You and Finn are our children. Nothing they did in that lab, nothing they planned for you, none of that changes how much we love you. Do you understand me?" Luna stayed silent for a long moment, just clinging to me as the tears came harder. I held her close, rocking her gently, while through the bond one felt Finn's confusion and anger mixing with hers. My heart ached for both of them. They had already carried so much. This new truth was almost too heavy for their young shoulders. I kissed the top of Luna's head and whispered again, "We'll get through this together. Your father and I will be right here with you every step of the way." The twins were finally fast asleep. I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark bedroom, watching Luna and Finn breathe steadily in the dim light. Their faces looked so peaceful now, but I knew the truth had shattered them tonight. I waited until I was absolutely sure they were deeply under, then quietly slipped out of the room and stepped into the hallway. I pulled out my phone and called Victor. He answered on the first ring. "Hey," he said, voice low. "How are they?" "They're finally asleep," I whispered, leaning against the wall. "But tonight was rough, Victor." I was in the bedroom with them when Luna snuck out. I didn't even notice at first. When I realized she was gone, I went looking for her, and found her crouched behind some crates, listening to Jax and Jean. I paused, rubbing my temple. She already knew they were created in a lab, and she knew Jean dropped them off in Siberia. But she didn't know the rest of it. She heard Jax tell Jean that the twins were specifically engineered to be living void batteries, that their bodies were designed from the start to store and channel massive amounts of void energy, that they were built as weapons and fuel. Victor was quiet for a long moment. "Through their bond, Finn heard every word too," I added softly. "They're both hurting badly." Victor let out a heavy breath. "Bring them home, Livia. As soon as it's safe to travel, come home. We'll sit down together, all of us, and talk through this properly. They need to hear from both of us that none of this changes how much we love them." I closed my eyes, feeling some of the tension leave my shoulders. "I will," I said. It'll get us on the first safe transport back. I just needed you to know what happened tonight. Come home when you can, he replied gently. We'll face the rest of this as a family.
I was drifting inside Victor's mind when I suddenly felt a sharp, desperate tug. The twins yanked me out of his head and pulled me straight into their shared dreamscape. When the dream stabilized, I found myself standing in a vast, star-filled void. Luna and Finn stood before me, both of them looking small and deeply shaken. Naira was there as well, standing quietly behind them. I stepped forward and spoke gently. You heard the truth tonight. Helix created you in a lab with one purpose, to be living void batteries. Your bodies were engineered to store and channel massive amounts of void energy. That is why your powers have always felt so overwhelming. Because they were never truly yours to control. They were designed to be used by others. Luna's eyes filled with tears. So, we're not real? You are very real, I said firmly. Your mother and father love you more than you know. I have been inside your father's mind many times. I've felt how deeply Victor and your mother care for you both. To them, you are their children, not experiments, not weapons. The fact that you have thoughts, feelings, and love for each other. That was never part of Helix's plan. You surpassed their design the moment you became a family. I paused, looking at them both with warmth. I have seen what the void can do. I watched it nearly destroy your father. The fact that you two carry so much of it inside you and still remain kind and loving is a miracle. You are not alone. Your mother, your father, and Naira will help you carry this burden. As I finished speaking, I looked up at Naira and gave her a small nod. Naira stepped forward and placed a gentle hand on Luna's shoulder. Luna, she said softly, go give your grandfather a hug and a kiss. Luna walked up to me without hesitation. I knelt down and wrapped my arms around her. She hugged me tightly and kissed my cheek, her small body still trembling slightly. While Luna stayed with me, Naira gently guided Finn a few steps away to speak with him alone. She knew he was the more introverted of the two and needed space. I could still hear their conversation clearly in the dream. I'm so angry, Finn said, his voice tight and shaking. They made us like this. Like we're nothing but tools. I hate them for what they did to us. It feels like it's burning me up inside and I don't know what to do with it. Naira crouched down in front of him, her voice calm and steady. Finn, remember what I've taught you about the void. You've learned how to keep it from leaking out, how to control it and channel it properly. Your anger is the same as the void. It's powerful, it's dangerous if left unchecked. But it can also become a source of strength. You must not let it leak out and control you. You have to channel it, focus it, direct it, and use it the same way you use your void power. Turn that anger into purpose. Let it make you stronger instead of letting it consume you. Finn stayed silent for a moment, absorbing her words. Naira placed a hand on his shoulder. You're not alone in this. We will help you learn how to carry it.